So I was having a discussion in the comments with another turner about tenons versus recesses on bowls as a mounting method. And I want to take a little time to do a demonstration and show you benefits and drawbacks of both. I want to preface this by saying there's no right or wrong way. There is ways to do this that prevent more security than others depending on the orientation of the wood and the situation. So I'm going to take this little block of sapele and turn a tenon on one side and a recess on the other, and then we'll get into a little bit of discussion about the differences in holding techniques. Most woodworkers should understand that when you're looking at a piece of wood, what you are essentially looking at is a bundle of fibers. If you look at each of these little pieces of dowel, you'll see that the grain is running this way. Essentially, that grain is a stack of little straws. Those straws, as the living tree is growing, draw nutrients and water up into the trunk and pull the nutrients and things from photosynthesis in the leaves down into the body. So these are like little transportation tubes or highways. When you are gripping this wood in a chuck, you need to think about, as you're turning a bowl, you need to think about what this grain direction could mean. So for just a very crude example, cross grain, if you are pinching or cutting into that, say with the dovetail joint of a chuck on chuck jaws, what you're doing is compressing those grains from the end grain. So if you're turning an end grain piece, so the orientation is lengthwise, you're going to compress that with a tenon in the chuck, because that chuck squeezes that grain together, right? If on end grain you had a recess, it would wedge it apart. Likewise, on a bowl, again, grain is running in the this direction, both in the wood and in the chuck. So when we're looking at a tenon on cross grain, we need to remember that the grain's running this way, and when the grain's running that direction, it's pretty easy to separate it. When you have dovetail jaws on a chuck pinching cross grain, it is very simple for that grain to break. Depending on the piece you're turning, this could be a lot of problems. This could be very, very dangerous. The solution is to make a recess. The jaws of the chuck both compress on a tenon and expand on a mortise or recess. The benefit here is, although you have the same weakness going this direction, with the expansion, you have the stack of grains bundled on the sides, and you get a much more firm hold. There's one more way to deal with this problem that eliminates all these issues, at least on the piece you're turning. The most secure way to hold a piece of wood on a lathe, other than in between centers, is by compressing the lengthwise grains of a piece on the end grain. By taking a sacrifice block end grain and putting it into the chuck, and then gluing your workpiece to that sacrifice block, you create the most surface area in an omnidirectional manner. It's going in every direction because you're gluing it, so you're getting a bond throughout the fibers. So it's going in every direction it possibly could, inwards and outwards. So you're creating the most secure method of holding this piece of wood on the chuck, although it's not even touching the chuck. This takes away most of the possibility of the wood splintering as you open a chuck, and it completely removes the possibility of the wood shearing as you use a tenon and compress the chuck. Another thing to notice is this is a little bit different. I mean, the same things occur, the same forces occur. However, the Nova chuck has a dovetail, both internal and external, and there's a little bit of a ridge here on the inside lip that can grab and seat in the grain and help create a crack and separate it.